How do our actions influence other people? This is a question or a thought I've pondered a lot over the years. Probably since I first watched the movie The Butterfly Effect. This movie came out in 2004 and it stars Ashton Kutcher. And it's a good movie. However, I'm not going to recommend it to you because it is a tragic movie. It's not the most happy-go-lucky experience you'll have. It's a science fiction, and it's a really interesting thought experiment, but the movie itself is rather depressing. If you've never heard of the butterfly effect before, this is the best definition I could find of it. The butterfly effect is a concept from chaos theory, stating that small, seemingly insignificant changes in initial conditions can lead to massive, unpredictable variations in the long-term outcome of a system. So in other words, a small action that happens right now can forever change the future. Something small has this ripple effect outwards, like throwing a pebble into a pond. You see the ripples spread out further and further and further into the pond until eventually they dissipate. But that ripple effect, or in other words, the butterfly effect, is the action that initial pebble had on the pond and the ripples coming forth from that pebble going into it. And so I think about this often enough, how one small, tiny little thing that you could say to somebody or that happens changes the outcome of the future. So take, for example, driving. Let's say you decide to leave your house at 5:26 p.m. to drive to whatever location you decide to go to. You get there safely. But let's say that for some reason you decide to leave at 5:27 p.m. that day instead of 5:26. And that minute variation where you decide to leave at 5:27 instead of 5:26, there was a conflict in traffic leading to a car accident, and you didn't make it to your destination. The only thing that really changed the outcome there was the time that you left the house. Because at the time of driving at 5:27, there was another driver that you got into an accident with. But if you had left at 5:26, that driver wouldn't have been present on the road at that moment, and the accident wouldn't have happened. Now, that's a more extreme case of a butterfly or a ripple effect, or essentially just, maybe that's actually not the effect applied correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Essentially, a choice that happened earlier affected the future. The choice of leaving at 5:26 or 5:27. Now, in a smaller case, let's say you engage in conversation with somebody and they give you an idea. That idea cascades into you eventually building a business. But maybe you didn't have a conversation with that person that day, and the idea never came to your mind, and then you never built that business. That's essentially what I'm getting at. How do our actions influence other people, for better or worse? Not only like the things we say to somebody else, but in everything you do or do not do. Deciding to leave your house that day, or deciding to stay home. Deciding to join a specific hobby or community, or deciding to just read a book. Every action you take or don't take has a ripple effect into the world, causing second and third order consequences that you will never see. Some you might see, and you might be able to draw some conclusion from that perhaps your action did influence some outcome. But it's really hard to know if your action did influence the outcome or not. Perhaps every action influences every outcome, no matter how small. And this is the interesting thing about the movie, The Butterfly Effect. In the movie, Ashton Kutcher, I don't remember his character's name, he essentially realizes that he can travel back in time and make a different choice to affect the outcome of the future. There's things in his life that aren't perfect, and he realizes that if he goes back in time to change one little decision, it will profoundly affect the future in a way that he hopes will be better for everybody involved. However, that little action he takes to go back in time and change the past has unintended consequences for the future. Even though he may have eliminated the bad thing from happening, other bad things happen he just didn't foresee. So it makes you wonder if any decision you make, no matter how well-intentioned or ill-intentioned, will lead to both good and bad consequences regardless. It's a bit of a cause and effect question, and a little bit of a really, well, I shouldn't say a little bit, it is a really difficult thing to sit with in your head for a while, trying to figure out, okay, if every little action I make has this much meaning behind it, and this much cause and effect, doesn't that make everything I do very important? Doesn't that mean I should weigh every single decision as if my life depended on it? And the lives of other people depended on it? That might be a little extreme. And of course, you could go down that rabbit hole, though I don't know if it's going to be the most healthy outlook to approach life with, because, you know, if you want to just get by day to day, you know, eat some food, go exercise, see some sunshine, you know, I don't know if you really want to be thinking about the second and third order consequences of every little thing you do, from each breath you take to the person you decide to make eye contact with across the street. And that forever changes their life because they decide to make eye contact with you, and suddenly you meet a stranger and suddenly you fall in love. Who knows? Anything can happen at any moment. We are living inside of this giant chaotic soup. Every day is a different day, even though every day can feel the same. Even though we can do the same habits day after day, work the same job, go to the same gym, meet the same people, have similar conversations, each day is not the same as the last. You are a little bit older. You feel a little bit different in your body. There are things that are uncontrollable that happen from day to day. Things that are nice surprises and things that are not so nice surprises. There is chaos in every day, though as human beings, we try to look at the order because the order keeps us somewhat sane. At least I'd like to think so. Maybe we are all insane inside and we're just trying to cope. Is this video copium? Maybe it is. Hard to say. But I do find it really interesting how we can have an interaction with one person, and that interaction can influence somebody on a very grand scale that we may never see the consequences of. How you can inspire somebody. You can give someone an idea and they run with it, and they end up building or creating something that didn't exist in the world before because that idea never entered their head. Or you can also do the negative. You can hurt someone. And there's a lot of people who spend a lot of their time trying to hurt other people. It's sad, but it's also the world we live in. Sometimes it's just indifference. I suppose we are just delving into morality here. But whatever you deem as good or bad is somewhat subjective. As even though there's a lot of institutions, organizations, and people would have you think otherwise. Life is chaotic, messy, confusing, overwhelming, and beautiful all at the same time. And it is interesting that we even have the capacity to be able to think about these thoughts. Because in a way, it does make you feel very alive. even though it can feel a little bit existential and a little bit overwhelming to think about for too long. Just giving it a moment of thought for a little while can put things into a different perspective than you have never thought about them before.